want to start with the MSI because I think by us kind of talking through what your results mean, it's going to help us kind of recap what all we talked about last week as far as motivation goes. So you should have totaled up your score for each of the 5 scales, right? So does everybody have a total score on theirs for intrinsic process, instrumental, self-concept, external and internal, and then goal internalization? Everybody have scores for that? And then you should have either done like a little line graph, or you may have done a bar chart kind of showing your difference and all that. What I would like for you to do is to take your scores, and you see up here on the board those 5 areas, and you don't have to put your name beside it, but I want you to write your 5 scores for those things. So I can take my personal one. I've done this, and I've come up here, and for me, my scores are 24, 15, 15, 35, 34. So that's all I'd like for you to do. So grab yours, come put your scores up here, and I just want to see everyone's numbers up here real quick. Markel, I have yours. Gave it back to y'all on Thursday, and I remember giving it back to you. Don't worry about it if you don't have your score. Just make sure that I put your grade in the grade book. I remember handing it back to you, so as long as you've got the grade for it.
Sometimes you get like weird numbers. I got 18, 28, 18, 28, 13.
Mm-hmm. That's just coincidental for you, yeah.
I just figured it was like really rarely like a pattern.
Y'all are like the most organized class ever. Y'all are like putting them in line.
And like rows. I could turn mine into.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see it come in. There you go.
I'm sorry, give me one.
You were the one that bullied me. He's always bullying me.
Markel, such a big bully.
I don't know.
It's always mean to me.
Oh, I have it turned on. Yeah. Huh? That's okay.
Not the first. One of the few.
Yeah.
So Wilk saw snow last year, but I mean, I think he was so little that like he didn't remember it. So this was like his first time with snow. So we went out yesterday morning because he wakes up really early, and Chad built like a little snowman and put it on top of the picnic table outside, and was like, "Look, Wilk, it's a snowman." And he touches it, and you know when the snow compacts or whatever, he goes, "Daddy, Dad not a snowman, Dad a ice man." Touche, 3-year-old. Like, you are right. Like, can't argue with that.
I was probably older though before I experienced it.
All right, awesome. So, we've kind of got everyone's scores up here. And I think what, first of all, is kind of cool to look at is that there's no real one scale that everyone is ultra motivated by, that we could, I think, generalize everyone by, right? What do y'all think, kind of looking at these scores? What's some of y'all's first thoughts about that, just how people scored in general?
Someone got a 0.
Someone has a 0. So I'm going to kind of, any of the big patterns or things that y'all see, I'm going to kind of circle so we can look at them. So someone has a 0 for external self-concept. Any other patterns you see or big picture things?
Seems like everybody's kind of high on the internal self-concept.
Okay, so, well, I'm going to put an H here. So this one tends to be a little bit higher in general.
Some of the highest score were like a goal orientation.
Mm-hmm. So another kind of high one. Is there one that it looks like people were consistently low on?
Maybe the instrumental one.
Looks like the external ones probably the lowest.
Yeah. I would probably agree with external being kind of the lowest. So then how would you describe maybe intrinsic and instrumental?
That wasn't really this consistent. Like
So-
all in the middle. That's like all very consistent.
So kind of like mid-range or either like varied. Like there's some people who are really high.
Well, instrumental was all over the place.
So we're going to say varied. And then this one,
Pretty consistent.
so pretty consistent. We'll kind of say like mid, consistent, or whatever. So I think, like, first off, before we even talk about what these 5 scales really mean, I just think it's interesting to look at, and I think should kind of go back to one of the first things that we said about motivation. What do these scores tell you about motivation?
That it's different for everyone.
It's different for everyone. So one thing you'll notice, or you may have noticed when you completed the MSI, was there any kind of evaluation at the end? So once you figured out your scores, was there anything that told you, think back to like when we did the Big 5 personality, right? It told you that you were either high or low on that certain scale, right? Does this do that? No. Why not? Is there any judgment, per se, to be made off of how you scored in these different things? I see some heads shaking, so what are y'all thinking? Can we say that if you scored low in external self-concept, that's a good or bad thing? Can we say that? No. Okay, so we aren't making judgments of good or bad, wrong or right off of this. What are we trying to understand, do you think, by taking this? What does it tell you about yourself? How you're motivated. So this is a great way, and it's a good scale to help you understand a little bit more about yourself, about how you're motivated, but it can also help us understand about how other people are motivated. So one of the very first things that we talked about in this motivation section is that we can't come into motivation assuming that everyone's motivated the same, and that what we do to try to motivate someone can be the same for everybody, right? And so this is a good scale that's based off of theory, based off of research, to help us maybe get a little bit closer at understanding kind of like what's going on in y'all's head, right? So let's kind of walk through each of these because I want to make sure that y'all understand what each of these scales mean and what the terms mean. So intrinsic process. This was in the slides on motivation. And so y'all, it's kind of there towards the end. If you're motivated by intrinsic process, what does that mean? How are you motivated? The fun stuff. So I'm just going to write up here, fun. Y'all describe that to me. Put that into your own words. So there were some of you that scored pretty high. I mean, y'all had a 32, a 33, a 29. So you could say, yeah, I'm motivated by the fun stuff. What does that mean? So when you think about it, what kind of things have gotten you motivated before? What's going to get you to do something?
Have a day off from school. In the semester, read the grades, you get 2 days off for the test.
Yeah, so kind of going back to even that like example of, well, if you have good attendance, maybe your parents let you stay home from school one day. Or any of y'all ever have like in elementary school where if you had like good behavior, there was a party at the end of the month that you got to go to, right? So someone who's motivated by things like that, you're motivated by intrinsic process. Why do y'all think that fun stuff is called intrinsic? Because does that seem a little counterintuitive based off of some of our conversations last week? What's maybe like a little discrepancy you see there that could be confusing? If you're motivated by fun stuff, would you think intrinsically?
It almost seems like it'd be flipped because intrinsically it's like within you, like more internal.
Yeah, so this is one of those that like it's a little hard to understand sometimes because the fun stuff people outside of you are providing, right? So we would consider that extrinsic reward sometimes. Or what if you just see the activity itself as being fun? So you enjoy, any of y'all ever had a class that you thought was fun? Right? You went to that class because you thought it was fun. Like you didn't have to, nobody had to pull your teeth to get there. The teacher didn't have to punish you for not being in class. You went because you enjoyed it. You thought it was fun, right? That's where the intrinsic comes from. So that's kind of more of what this intrinsic process is thinking about, is that when you find things fun, you're going to be more motivated to do it. Now, what about the folks who are motivated? You have instrumental motivation. We had a 33 here, a 32, a 30, another 30, 29. What does it mean to be motivated instrumentally? Money. What else? Bonuses. Promotions. So what does this make y'all think of? This one's kind of straight. Huh? Your job, your environment. This one's kind of straightforward. Is it intrinsic or extrinsic? Extrinsic. So I'm going to also kind of write beside these just to remind us. This one's a little bit more extrinsically motivated. Okay? Talk to me of what does it look like for someone to be motivated instrumentally? If you were trying to motivate a person that was high on instrumental, what would you do as the leader?
I'll pay you to do it.
I'll pay you to do it.
Or like if you meet a certain quota, like you get a bonus.
Absolutely, yeah. You meet a certain sales quota, you get a bonus, right? That's awesome. So then we have this third scale, this idea of external self-concept. This one was overall kind of one of the lowest. We had some mid-range people. We had a 25, 24, 24, a 27, but for the most part, they're all under 30 and kind of under 20. What does it mean if a person has external self-concept? What are they motivated by? What others think? Okay. Describe this one to me. If someone is motivated by what others think, how does that impact their behavior? Yeah. So because they feel like people are watching them, judging them, they've got to make people feel proud of what they do. That motivates them for a certain type of behavior, right? So if you're a leader and you know someone that you are leading has an external self-concept, what do you do to help motivate them?
You're doing a good job.
Tell them, hey, you're doing a good job. Yeah, you talk to them. You let them know what you think. That one's kind of a tough one because is it hard for us to admit that matters to us? Yeah. I don't want to point out whoever said 0 on this one, but just a thought. Do y'all think, like, in reality, we ever are at a point where we don't care what other people think? Yeah? I'll admit, I think the older I've gotten, the less I care. My Nana, gosh, she's 84 now, and she will say and do things that I'm like, Nana, and she's like, I am 84. I could care less what people think. How many grandparents, like, you've seen that happen, right? I think that it comes with age and maturity, but think back to maybe like your 12-year-old self. Do you think as a 12-year-old maybe you were more highly motivated by this? Yeah. So I think that kind of points out one thing to also say about motivation is that these motivators can change, right? Just depending on life circumstances. So internal self-control. What does that mean if a person has an internal self-concept that motivates them? What are they motivated by?
What the person thinks is important.
And I'm going to just put number 1, important, whatever they prioritize. So if you're a leader working with someone who has an internal self-concept, how do you motivate them?
Assign them a job that they think is important.
Assign them a job that they think is important. Have any of y'all ever done something or been asked to do something that you thought was not important? Give me an example. Tell me what you were asked to do that wasn't important and what you would have rather been doing.
So we have we call him Penguin Man, but he's like the big guy in dining services, and he'll come on in and I'll have a line at the door, and he's like, hey, your ice is empty.
Mm-hmm.
You should go fill that while you're by yourself, and there's a line of people because you don't have more important things to be doing.
Yeah. So he tells you go fill up the ice when you really think what's important is taking care of the customers that are there in the store.
Yeah.
Right? So did you feel motivated to do that thing that you thought was unimportant? No. So it's really getting at the heart of what do people prioritize? What do they think is important? So then the last one, if you are motivated by goal internalization, what does that mean? How are you motivated? There's a lot of high ones. We said this was a high one here.
For me, I want to check it off if I have something.
Yeah. So it's something to do. What else? What's a good descriptor for that we want to use? It's more than just the thing you want to do, and it's more than just the goal. You're working for what? A cause. Yeah. So goal internalization is all about the cause. So since y'all are a class of high goal internalizers, talk to me about it. What does it mean that if you are motivated by a cause?
Means you want to do something that makes you feel like you're making a difference, like you're moving towards something that it's not a task, it's more of an achievement or something.
Yeah. It's an achievement. You're not just doing it to be doing it. You feel like you're making a difference. What, going back to some of our leadership theories, where does goal internalization tie in? It's one of the very last theories we talked about before Exam 2. All about working for a cause. Change. Transformational leadership, right? Like, that has a connection to some of the 4 I's that we talked about, how leaders think, and this idea. So a lot of times, transformational leaders they kind of get into that role as a leader because they're highly motivated and have a goal internalization. They want to work towards a cause, and that's what matters to them more. So that's kind of an interesting connection there between motivation and transformational leadership. So external self-concept, is that intrinsic or extrinsic? If you're motivated by what others think, are you extrinsically or intrinsically motivated? Extrinsically. If you have an internal self-concept, you're motivated by what you think is important. Intrinsic or extrinsic? Intrinsic. And then goal internalization, intrinsic or extrinsic? I can't hear you. Intrinsic or extrinsic? You're motivated by a cause. You work towards something because of the collective goal. What would be the reason why you would think it would be extrinsic?
Because if the cause is like outside, like it's the organization or whatever you're working towards.
Mm-hmm. If you worked for an organization that you didn't agree with what the cause is, would you stay there? No. So even if it's someone else's cause, you still believe in it, so you're working towards it. So what would that probably be? Intrinsic. Okay. So kind of some differentiators here, right? And here's the thing. How many of you now kind of looking at your scores, there were some things that you had a high score for things that were intrinsic and a high score for things that were extrinsic? Anybody? Anyone have kind of, you were really high on all of the intrinsic things? Anyone really high on all the extrinsic things? There's like majority of y'all who didn't raise your hands. So what are just some things maybe you take away from that as you look now at like your kind of motivation, whether you're intrinsically or extrinsically motivated? What do y'all take away from your own scores?
For me, it probably depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty low throughout the whole thing.
Pretty low throughout the whole thing. So what to you would you say is, yeah, that's something that I get really motivated by?
Well, mine said instrumental was my highest, but
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be more of the intrinsic process.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was kind of even with the other fours.
Yeah. Well, think about it. Are money, bonuses, promotions, are those instrumental motivators bad things? No. And are you probably motivated to receive those things because whatever you're being asked to do is fun to you? Could that be? So that may be kind of a connection you see there. So there's both intrinsic and extrinsic things that are motivating you for that one thing. What else? What are some other takeaways y'all have about your own scores?
I feel like mine kind of actually like go hand in hand with my like Clifton strengths a little bit.
Ooh.
Because I'm like focused and disciplined, and like a lot of mine are intrinsic. So, and I feel like the way that I feel that way is like I know that I can always depend on myself. So I tend to just be that way when I'm working.
Yeah, so you're not really considering external pressures or things like that. It's what you feel like you need to get done because you focus. I like that. Good connection there. Dominique, what about you? I saw you back there kind of thinking.
I think I'm the one that put the zero up there.
Really? So please enlighten us. We all want to be like you. How did you get to the point where you're like, I don't care what other people think about me. Just don't care. That's awesome. Awesome. What was your highest?
The first one.
The first one. Yeah. So what's something that you've done that you would say, it was fun, so I was motivated to do it? Like nobody had to make me. I'd show up. I'd do it.
Like last semester, some of the in your class, sometimes we play some games.
Ah, thanks. Bonus points for Dominique. No, thanks. I appreciate that. But I mean, yeah, like we've had classes before, and are there things as a leader we can do to tap into all these different ways people are motivated? Absolutely. I sometimes wonder, man, it would be so nice to give this to all my students at the beginning of the semester. Do you think I could change how I teach based off of what I know about my students at the beginning? Absolutely. There's things I could do different. If I realized that most of my students were instrumental, so those things were highly motivating to them, then I may look at more extra credit opportunities, bonuses, things like that in class that would motivate people to come. But if everyone's really low on that, it doesn't matter how many extra credit opportunities I give because I'm not going to take them. I will tell you that is one of the things I have with extra credit is that I always want to give students an opportunity to learn material, to pull up their grade if they want to, and it's never the students who need it that take advantage of it. Why does that happen? Now that we know a little bit about motivation, why does extra credit not really work for the ones who need it?
Because maybe the class isn't a goal.
Yeah, if they're not intrinsically motivated to be here, if it's not part of their goal, if they're not motivated by those things, it's not going to work. So what could I do for the student who's not doing well in my class to help them be more motivated to do well in my class? What would y'all say if I were trying to kind of like tap into one of these 5? What would I do? So most of this class, highly motivated internal self-concept, highly motivated goal internalization. What could I do as a teacher to help y'all be more motivated for this class now that I know that?
You could either make it more fun or you could let them know that they're doing a good job.
Absolutely. Let y'all know where y'all are doing a good job. I will tell y'all that is something I don't do a good job at. I think I tend to be that person that like when I'm grading things, I just mark off what was wrong. Or like I read through essays and I mark off what's wrong and I give scores. Wouldn't you sometimes like to know what you did well? Yeah. I know I've got to get better about doing that as a teacher. But yeah, if I know now that y'all have an internal self-concept, that you're going to be motivated by what you think is important, then maybe I need to figure out what about this class is it that y'all think is important. When you come into class and you've done the reading, maybe I should just ask y'all, what was important about what you read? Or maybe I give you the syllabus at the beginning of the semester and I say, these are the things that I really think this course should be centered around. How do y'all want to go about talking about it? Which of these things maybe y'all would have liked to have talked about motivation at the very beginning. Have there been like any times like that in the class this semester that we've gone over something and you're like, I wish we would have talked about this first or earlier on? No? So maybe then goal internalization is the problem. Like, what's the cause? Why are you here? Does this class connect at all to any of your future goals or things you're wanting to achieve? If I can try to figure out what it is that you think is important, that you're trying to make a difference in, I can find ways to help maybe the concepts of these classes connect to that more. Does that help make sense about how these things with motivation work? Do y'all see any connections at all with any of the 5 motivation theories we talked about last week? Maslow's, Herzberg, reinforcement theory, acquired needs, theory XY. See any connections here?
I think McClelland's is pretty well hit on because it talks about power, achievement, and affiliation. So like the affiliation is kind of like, oh, you're doing a good job getting that feedback from others. And achievement is kind of like making sure things get done and with the goal.
Absolutely. Any others? Any other connections? What kind of things are Theory X leaders going to use to motivate? Instrumental. Definitely external self-concept. Again, if you're that Theory X leader, if you think people just aren't motivated and they're lazy and whatever, you're going to assume that they probably really care about what others think. So you're going to put a lot of pressure on them, would you say? Yeah. So again, some things to be kind of ruminating in your head. You've got to start drawing these connections here before the exam because all these things kind of build on each other. Start thinking about that, taking these pieces and saying, oh, this helps me understand intrinsic, extrinsic a little bit more. Before we dive into locus of control, we're going to take a quiz real quick. So make sure you have a pen out. Kind of set your notes and stuff to the side. We're going to take a quiz.
Is this our last one?
We have a few more. So we still have 3 left after this, after the break. And I apologize, question number 5, there is a D to it, and it's printed on the back page, so I'm sorry. So make sure you look at all 4 options. Seven and 8, you don't have to write an essay, sentence or two. Just kind of directly answered that, right? So just so y'all don't feel like you have to take a ton of time. You're finished. Go ahead and pass it forward. Give me Grace, please. While y'all are passing those forward, we're going to kind of dive into this next idea, and it's going to seem separate, but really what I hope y'all are kind of seeing by us talking about it now is that this is an integral piece of motivation, and this idea of locus of control. I brought back up this PDF that is from like week 2 or 3 of class when we talked about emotional intelligence. Do y'all remember emotional intelligence? What is it? What is emotional intelligence?
It's like how in tune you are with like your feelings and like other people's.
How in tune you are with your feelings and other people's feelings. And when did we talk about emotional intelligence?
Was that during skill theory?
It was right before skill theory. What was the very first set of leadership theories we talked about? Trait theory, right? And we said that emotional intelligence we kind of lump in as a theory about leadership traits or personality traits. And kind of thinking back, refreshing your brain a little bit, with emotional intelligence and these traits, we said that people's emotional intelligence are based off of 5 different things. They're either these personal competencies or kind of these group competencies. Look back at these 2 specifically. These are personal competencies that we said help determine your level of emotional intelligence. It's like you have self-regulation and motivation. So we've been talking about motivation theory, and it's connecting back all the way to something that we talked about the second week of class, right? And self-regulation, we said, was all about being able to manage your own kind of internal feelings, your impulses, the resources that you have. And then motivation was described here as your tendencies that guide or facilitate your ability to reach goals. And so I'm going to kind of just leave this up here because this is going to connect heavily with what we've been talking about with motivation and locus of control. So these PowerPoint slides for locus of control have now been in Brightspace for like 2 weeks. Anybody tell me, when you looked those over, essentially what's the difference? What is locus of control? When we're talking about that with someone, what do we mean by it? What are we trying to describe? I've written it on the board. Someone's sense of control or how they explain why things happen. Why do you think we want to understand someone's sense of control or why they explain how things happen? Why do we want to understand that, and how in the world does it connect to motivation? I see 2 words that are written there that remind me of some words we've been using in class with motivation.
Your intrinsic and extrinsic.
And extrinsic. Okay? Internal, external. So locus of control essentially says that people either have an internal sense of control or they have an external sense of control. So they either believe that things happen because of external factors. Like, there's nothing they can do to control what's happening to them. There's nothing they can do to control situations. And then there's people who have a sense of control that's internal. That means they think that they're in control of what happens to them. They internally can explain why things happen. Do you think one sense of control tends to be more motivated by a certain type of motivator? What would y'all say? Who would you say is intrinsically motivated? Who would you say is extrinsically motivated?
With the sense of control being internal and then why things have to be external.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of both. So, like, the sense of control means, like, are you in control of your situation or not? So, we kind of keep using class or school as an example for this. Your grade in this class. How many of you believe maybe not this class, so y'all don't feel like it's personal to this class, just in general. How many of you believe you are in charge of your GPA? Like, you earn your GPA. How many of you feel like your teacher assigned you your GPA? Like, you don't really have any control over your GPA. Anybody?
In high school, I felt like that.
Why did you feel like that in high school?
Well, I had a science class and we would literally never get anything back. Like, it was kind of just like how much you participated. Like, I think one time you gave me a B and someone went up there and like had something to, like, of our graded papers, and he was like, oh no, blah blah blah. And then, like next we knew, like my grade was changed to an A. So I think it's just like it was just.
You felt like it didn't matter what you did.
Yeah, whatever he felt like we deserved, that's what we got.
That's a great example. So yeah.
I was going to say, I do feel like it's kind of external because a teacher can make a class as hard or as easy as they want to. And you could end up with a professor teaching the same class that's really hard or one that makes it easier and doable.
So I think like one of the big factors in that when like we approach school and into whether we feel like we have an internal or external control of it is how much information are we given by the teacher. Like if I tell you exactly how I'm going to grade, exactly what is needed, do you feel like, so like when you get a rubric for an assignment, do you feel like you're more in control of deciding what your grade is? If you don't have a rubric, how do you feel? Hope I put down what they want, right? So like as a teacher, providing clarity can help sometimes with students' sense of control towards a class. Internal, what's really important to know about this is that internal locus of control, these are people, and we kind of go back to this idea of expectancy theory. It's a kind of bigger, broader motivation theory, but it's this idea that if you're internally motivated or have an internal locus of control, sense of control, why things happen, you believe if I do A, I'm going to get B. Like the world around me says, you do A, I can expect B. So I'm going to do A, and I expect to receive B. An external locus of control, on the other hand, prescribes more to a motivation theory that we call attribution theory. But people with this external locus of control tend to explain why things happen by attributing it to an external factor. So it's not about what you do personally, it's about what's going on externally. So here's something that's, I think, a good example, and I'll be honest, I'm stealing this from conversations that I've had with Bill and Penny. Many of y'all that may have been in class with them know that they were foster parents at one time. And they have told me that being foster parents has been the biggest case study or just like lived experience for them of understanding locus of control and what it means. So some of the children that they have fostered, it's very, very common for these children to have external locus of control. Why do you think that is? Did they choose to grow up with a parent who had substance abuse? Did they choose to get kicked out of their apartment? Did they choose to be put into the foster care system? Did they choose to not have food? Was that anything that these children could have controlled themselves? No, like their entire lived experience up until they're 10 years old is that everything that happens to them is the result of somebody else or something else going on behind them. How does that make it tough to provide parenting to someone with, or a child with, an external locus of control? Bill says kind of the most interesting thing was after some of the kids had been with them for a week, they asked when they were going to have to move. And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, the landlord, like, when is y'all's rent up? And he was like, we own this house. The kids had never lived anywhere where they owned a house. I mean, it just wasn't an experience. So external locus of control. Can you see how there's sometimes, like, it's, again, I don't want you to think of this as like good versus bad, but there's reasons people may have an external locus of control, right? How do you get someone with external locus of control, though, to shift over to having more of an internal locus of control?
You can show them that, like you made something happen. It's like life doesn't always just happen to you. Sometimes you can make life work for you.
Yeah.
Give them little examples or something.
Kind of like those little successes, right? Like, here, you make a choice about something, and let's see what happens with it. How many of y'all have heard, and I've said it a few times in this class, you don't choose to be mad, or does someone make you mad? What do y'all usually say? When you're mad or angry at someone, what do you say?
Someone makes you mad.
Oh man, they made me mad, right? Is that an internal or external locus of control? External. You're attributing your anger, your emotion, to someone else, an external factor. In reality, is someone making you mad, or are you choosing to be mad at the situation? Choosing. So, there's our counseling session for the day. Everybody can leave $5 in the cup on your way out. But no, like seriously, and I say that like that was like one of the biggest things I've learned going to counseling is I have to realize if I'm going to have more of an internal locus of control, I've got to realize I'm in control of regulating my emotions, how I react to things, right? So it's interesting. There's usually a direct correlation. Someone that has a high level of emotional intelligence tends to have more of an internal locus of control. Which do y'all think is preferred in leadership? Why? Why would we want our leaders to have an internal locus of control?
More authentic.
More authentic?
I think also if your leader's saying, oh, if I just kind of like do nothing, everything will still be okay, and then stuff starts to fall apart, like your group is obviously going to be like, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, like having like if you're always just saying like things are going bad because of everything else going around me, then a leader's not going to be a real problem solver, right? Like, and then things are just going to kind of keep crumbling. But if you kind of realize that, yeah, we are able to have a positive impact on the things going around us. We have the choice to change our behaviors or what we're doing. Then oftentimes that leads to more change, to more problem solved, what have you. That's kind of, I feel like the real like high level important piece about this idea of internal versus external locus of control. And the reason why we talk about it is that we can talk all day long about motivation theories, about whether people are intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. But, okay, if I were to figure out that this whole class is extrinsically motivated, what do we know from research is better for you to be? For the long term, which is better? Intrinsic. Well, most of the time, people who are extrinsically motivated tend to have what sense of control? External. So how do I, as a leader, get you to be more intrinsically motivated if you don't have an internal sense of control? Does this make sense to y'all? Do y'all see kind of like the conundrum here? So it's kind of one of those that like you can't just treat one symptom, you've got to treat all the symptoms, right? And that's what locus of control helps us understand, is that we can't just kind of label people intrinsic, extrinsic, and then think we can just throw, I can't just talk to you about the relevance of this class to your degree. I've got to figure out why don't you see this class from an internal standpoint? Why don't you expect to get anything out of this class? If I don't address that first, I'm not going to be able to intrinsically motivate you. What are some of y'all's thoughts about this idea of internal versus external locus of control? Can y'all think of some times where maybe you've had more external locus of control in situations?
I think like if something's negative was happening to you, it's easier to be externally like.
Ooh, that's such a good point, Samantha. If something negative happens to us, it's much easier to have an external locus of control. When something good happens, who do we attribute that to? Look at me, I did everything right. So it's an interesting paradox because it does depend on the situation. But I encourage y'all before the exam, like in these PowerPoint slides, there's a lot of specifics about people with this. So like what you're going to find is that people who are have an internal sense of locus of control tend to take more risks. They're less anxious. They don't conform to authority as much because they believe in what they're able to do. These people tend to have a higher job satisfaction because they don't feel like if they're at a job and things are going wrong, it's not the boss's fault. They see that they can probably do some things to make the job a little bit better. They tend to adopt innovations quicker. All of those things. So really understand what's that difference. And then people with an external locus of control, these are people that really they think things happen because of luck. There is nothing they can do, right? They're going to get that job or they're not, and they're just lucky if they do. They don't really see that it matters what they do to help them get the job. It's just, I'm either going to get it or I'm not. It's all about luck. Yeah. Think about, like, back to being like the kid in 4th grade, right? If someone thinks that they're going to be a doctor, do they need to have an internal or external locus of control for that? Internal. Why?
Takes a lot of years of good grades, takes a lot of hard work.
But what if a kid has an external locus of control and they want to be a doctor? How do you help them?
Set like goals, give them an incentive, I guess.
Yeah. Do y'all see how, like, motivation and all this, I mean, like, it goes back to, like, even our early formative years, right? And again, how do we develop as a person into understanding what's in control of things and what's not? You know, a lot of times, and this is kind of one of those crazy things, external locus of control people tend to have unrealistic occupational goals. How many of y'all started out pre-vet your freshman year? Okay, I'm raising my hand because I was with y'all there, right? Okay. How many of y'all have friends that are still pre-vet senior year with barely a 2.0 GPA and they still think they're going to vet school? I've advised a lot of those. Internal or external locus of control? Oh, external. So, one, a lot of times people that have an external locus of control just don't have a realistic picture, but they also, like, you talk to those students, they don't have a 2.0 because of anything they've done. It's just because the class is hard, the professors are mean, this is a hard major, not, I probably haven't studied like I should, maybe science isn't my thing. See the difference in the conversation? Very different. So, I just think locus of control is fascinating. I think it is something that y'all are going to, again, kind of like power, you're going to really start to see it a lot. And I am going to give kudos right now. Explain to them, we're going to watch about 10 minutes of this video real quick that was sent to me. Explain to them what it is.
So this video, I was bored on Facebook last night watching videos. That's how I found this. It's all about, like, how do you motivate millennials and why do millennials do the things we do and why do we not like our jobs and how can you be a more efficient leader with a staff of mostly millennials.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to watch, like I said, I want to make sure we have time to talk about it afterwards. So we're probably going to watch about the first 7 to 10 minutes. We'll see. I've put it in Brightspace, so if you want to go back and watch the whole thing, you can. But while you're listening, I want y'all to be looking for locus of control. Look at ideas of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Look for some of those motivation scales. So the 5 things we talked about. Just kind of see what can you pull out, because this thing is chock full of application.
I have yet to give a speech or have a meeting where somebody doesn't ask me the millennial question.
What's the millennial question?
Can y'all see it okay?
Millennials as a generation, which is a group of people who were born approximately 1984 and after, are tough to manage. And they're accused of being entitled and narcissistic, self-interested, unfocused, lazy. But entitled is a big one. And because they confound leadership so much, what's happening is leaders are asking the millennials, what do you want? And the millennials are saying, we want to work in a place with purpose, love that. We want to make an impact, whatever that means. We want free food and beanbags. And so somebody articulates some sort of purpose, there's lots of free food and there's beanbags, and yet for some reason they're still not happy. And that's because there's a missing piece. What I've learned is that I can break it down into 4 pieces, right? There are four things, 4 characteristics. One is parenting, the other one is technology, third is impatience, and the 4th is environment. The generations that we call millennials, too many of them grew up subject to, not my words, failed parenting strategies, you know, where, for example, they were told that they were special all the time. They were told that they could have anything they wanted in life, just because they wanted to. Right? They were told, some of them got into honors classes not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And some of them got A's not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to do it with parents. Some kids got participation medals. They got a medal for coming in last, right? Which the science we know is pretty clear, which is it devalues the medal and the reward for those who actually work hard, and that actually makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed because they know they didn't deserve it, so it actually makes them feel worse, right? So you take this group of people, and they graduate school, and they get a job, and they're thrust into the real world, and in an instant, they find out they're not special, their moms can't get them a promotion, that you get nothing for coming in last, and by the way, you can't just have it because you want it, right? And in an instant, their entire self-image is shattered. And so you have an entire generation that's growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. The other problem to compound it is we're growing up in a Facebook, Instagram world. In other words, we're good at putting filters on things. We're good at showing people that life is amazing even though I'm depressed, right? And so everybody sounds tough. And everybody sounds like they got it all figured out. And the reality is there's very little toughness and most people don't have it figured out. And so when the more senior people say, well, what should we do? They sound like, this is what you got to do. And they have no clue. So you have an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations, right? Through no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own, right? They were dealt a bad hand, right? Now let's add in technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good. Right? So, you know, we've all had it when you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a little lonely. And so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, you know, hi, 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 hi. Because it feels good when you get a response. Right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is going slower, did I do something wrong? Did they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get it, you're going to hit a dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive. Right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe. Right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress. That's pretty much the primary reason why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them as something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they've never practiced the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, They're turning to things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook. Right? These things balance. Alcohol is not bad. Too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun. Too much gambling is dangerous. Right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance. Right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important. Right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted. Right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse. Right? So you have a generation growing up with lower self-esteem.
Sorry, I thought that was humorous. Did y'all notice the person on their laptop in the audience while he's talking about this? Sorry.
That doesn't have the coping mechanisms to do with stress. Right? Now you add in the sense of impatience. Right? They've grown up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it arrives the next day. You want to watch a movie? Log on and watch a movie. You don't check movie times. You want to watch a TV show? Binge. You don't even have to wait week to week to week. Right? I know people who skip seasons just so they can binge at the end of the season. Right? Instant gratification. You want to go on a date? You don't even have to learn how to be like, hey. You don't even have to learn and practice that skill. You don't have to be the uncomfortable one who says yes when you mean no, and says no when you mean no, and yes, and you don't have to swipe right. Bang, I'm a stud. Right? You don't have to learn the social and coping mechanism. Right? Everything you want, you can have instantaneously. Everything you want, instant gratification. Except job satisfaction and strength of relationships, there ain't no after that. They are slow, meandering, uncomfortable, messy processes. And so I keep meeting these wonderful, fantastic, idealistic, hardworking, smart kids that just graduated school. They're in their entry-level job. I sit down with them and I go, how's it going? They go, I think I'm going to quit. I'm like, why? They're like, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months. You know? It's as if they're standing at the foot of a mountain, and they have this abstract concept called impact that they want to have in the world, which is the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. I don't care if you go up the mountain quickly or slowly, but there's still a mountain. And so what this young generation needs to learn is patience. That some things that really, really matter, like love, or job fulfillment, joy, love of life, self-confidence, a skill set, any of these things, all of these things take time. Sometimes you can expedite pieces of it, but the overall journey is arduous and long and difficult. And if you don't ask for help and learn that skill set, you will fall off the mountain. Or you will, the worst case scenario, and we're already seeing it, the worst case scenario is we're seeing an increase in suicide rates, we're seeing an increase in this generation, we're seeing an increase in accidental deaths due to drug overdoses, we're seeing more and more kids drop out of school or take leaves of absence due to depression. Unheard of. This is really bad. The best case scenario, those are all bad cases, right? The best case scenario is you'll have an entire population growing up and going through life and just never really finding joy. They'll never really find deep fulfillment in work or in life. They'll just walk through life and it'll be just fine.
Right, so we'll kind of stop there. Like I said, there's about 5 more minutes that if y'all think that's pretty interesting, I encourage y'all to go kind of listen to the end of it. What connections did y'all make with motivation and locus of control with that video? Say that a little bit louder. Sorry.
When he was saying how like they're complaining about things, but it's never like their fault.
Very external locus of control. But there were some things that he pointed out with that idea of external locus of control. He talked about parenting, right? What did he say? How you're parented, is that in your control? No. So we have to admit that there are some things that we can't change about our environment, but what can we change? The way we react to it. So great connection there. What else did y'all pick up from it?
How we said like social media is like a big part of it.
Yeah.
Like you get that text, you're all willing to check it. Like if you're in a meeting after your phone will tell you not to work.
So social media, what type of motivator would you say he was describing that as? External and extrinsic, right? It motivates us in the short term, but the problem is the long term, right? And why do you think he was making such a big deal about that? And again, it's not just social media, but this idea of if we become where we're only motivated by extrinsic things, what's the impact that's going to have in the long term? The intrinsic things are going to be harder to find. Love, joy, satisfaction. All research shows that in the long term, extrinsic things can increase those in the short term, but in the long term, it doesn't sustain. So unless you find ways intrinsically to be motivated for those things, you're probably not going to achieve them. I think that video shows that direct connection between internal-external locus of control and how that affects intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And I hope it resonates with y'all. It resonates with me. I'm a millennial. I'm right in the middle of that. When he made that joke about like being on a job for 8 months and then not feeling like you're making an impact, 100% first job I ever had. I wasn't even there a year. And I was like, I'm not doing anything. Nothing's happening. And my mom was like, yeah, you're 24. You've been working there 6 months. Thanks, Mom. I completely can understand a lot of what he said there. Any other connections y'all made with that video? Anything else that resonated with you or? I encourage y'all watch the rest of it. Like I said, he's actually, and he doesn't mention this in this video, he's actually a psychology professor. So he has a book that's called Start with the Why, and it is all about motivation. But his entire profession is about studying motivation. So he actually, I forget where he is a professor at, but he could be teaching a psychology class, and you could have had him as a professor. Doesn't look like one, does he? No. I don't know. I don't think that. But really cool. But he has a book called Start with Why. And so if this whole thing of motivation motivates you, it's a really good, easy kind of book to read. It's written just kind of how he was talking, very layman terms, simple to understand, told through a lot of stories. But everything that he mentioned in that video is backed by research. So he wasn't just sitting there in a chair giving his opinion, which I think is pretty cool. So 2 announcements real quick. Those of you that are staying for the review for exam 3, we'll meet upstairs in 439 at 10:30. So in about 15 minutes. We will record the review and put it online. If it's helpful for you, we're going to do the review a little bit different today. But that'll be up there. The other thing is that, and I want to say it today because we have the exam on Thursday, that next week on Tuesday we're not going to meet for class, but we will have an online discussion board, and that is going to be your last case study for this class. So it's going to be over chapter 15. That's what's going to come next after the exam. And so you're going to want to participate in that discussion board by the end of the day next Tuesday. So it's going to be open. Once our exam finishes on Thursday, it'll open up, and you'll have until the end of the day next Tuesday. There's a video that you will watch. Some of y'all have watched it before in 2303. It's something we did last year, but it directly ties into chapter 15. So now I want y'all to kind of have a different lens to look at it. Important thing with that discussion post is if I can tell that you didn't, I'm going to be able to tell right away if you didn't read the chapter. Because there's some things that are said that contradict what the book says, and I want y'all to pick up on that. And I want you to talk about why you think those things contradicted each other. Yes?
Is it do we have to respond to people, or are we just?
Yes. And so I want you to respond at least to one other person in class. So what that's going to require is not everybody waiting until Tuesday at 11 o'clock at night posting. But you do have to have at least one response to another peer. And then what I would like to see is a conversation between you and that person. So I don't expect you to respond to 10 different people. But if someone posts on yours, I want you to, just like we would have a conversation in class, okay? That's what I'm hoping to look for. So it should be more than I just agree or whatever. I should see a little bit of banter back and forth, okay?
When did you say you're posting the video?
It should be up this afternoon. Okay. So we'll have the review for about an hour and a half, and then we'll get the video. It takes a little bit for it to process.
Okay. Which chapter was it?
15.
Okay.
Yep. So that's kind of, if you want to kind of make a list of what to do over Thanksgiving break, chapter 15, got to do that discussion board, and then the week we come back, we'll kind of debrief chapter 15 on Tuesday, and then we'll talk about chapter 16 on Thursday. So why not just go ahead and read chapter 16 too over the break? We have 3 quizzes left in class, 15, 16, and then that last week, so kind of be aware of that as well. So, all right, I'll see y'all upstairs for the review.